Hi, I'm John English. Today I'd like to discuss the figure drawing process we use at the Illustration Academy and at the Visual Arts Passage. This process was developed by my father, Mark English, over 25 years ago to assist students in their drawing, but also to assist them in seeing more than anything, being able to see the whole shape at once. It's very helpful in designing and thinking about picture construction as it relates to shape design and value control. And those are the things that I'll discuss. I'll be discussing those things as I'm drawing, is reasons why we go through these steps. The procedure I have written out here in description of the figure drawing process, which will be included in as a PDF in this demo. But let me go over the materials that we're going to use first. First, it's always best, I'm sitting on a drawing horse. You can do this on an easel, drawing horse, at a drawing board, wherever. But I like to use a clipboard, just like I would bring into life drawing class all the time. Always have a couple of sheets of paper behind the sheet that I'm drawing on, so it doesn't pick up the surface of the drawing board itself. This particular paper is a Strathmore toned tan. They also make it in a gray, but any kind of mid-tone paper that is pretty smooth. We'll be using new pastels. These are examples of new pastels. With this procedure, I'll be asking you to basically use just two, a light and a dark, and we'll be creating a third value that's completely separate, and I'll discuss that in the procedure. But the new pastels, there's many combinations. I use, this is a sepia and a Naples yellow light. This is I'm trying to think what it is. It's a light pink, a shell pink, and then a magenta. I use these two together a lot. You can use grays and stay to the cool side or stay to the warm side, but these, they generally work well together. They fall in the same family. These are both warm. These are kind of cool reds. There's another combination I like to use a lot that is a deep gray and a shell pink, and they work very well. It's kind of in the same family. The other things that you might bring in are just any kind of a cheap brush to move the pastel around, paper towels, kneaded eraser. They do make pastel pencils. I never really use them. These are Carbothello pencils, and you can get very precise with them, but they're still in the pastel family. So let me kind of reorganize my board here, and we'll start the process. You can either, I do this from a model most of the time, from life, and today, since it's a demo, I'm going to be doing this from a photograph. And drawing from photography, I'm of the mindset that there's really three types of drawing you need to develop, and that is drawing from life, which assists you very much, and that can be assist you in drawing from the other types of drawing, which is drawing from photography and drawing from memory. Drawing from life, there's more information. You can see around objects. You just have to train yourself to seeing things three-dimensionally. Drawing from good reference, which this is a piece of photography I shot, is, as a professional and working as an illustrator, I never hired a model to come to my studio except for a photo shoot. I always drew from photography. The advantage of it, and it's easier for me to draw from photography, for the first step is already taken care of, and that is flattening the three-dimensional shape into a two-dimensional shape. So that's already done with the photography, and I'm just accustomed with scale, and plus my eyes aren't as good as they used to be, so it's easier. I don't have to be adjusting my glasses looking 15 feet away or 10 feet away, however far the model is, than back at my board. So for the purposes today, it's going to work great. This procedure can be done one of two ways. It's based on the premise of 5 steps. The first step, first you have to decide which step you do first. The first step is this going to be a light object against a dark background or a dark object against a light background? If it's a dark object against a light background, I want you to start with your dark pastel. And again, this is a procedure. It's a way that it's more of an exercise and a lesson than it is a complete drawing technique, because we build on it through a period of time. We after a period of time, we start bringing in more values, more color, the use of line. We're editing more. We're thinking more about the design of the page, how the figure sits on the page. But the intent of this procedure is to teach you how to see the silhouette and identify the values in a way that it defines the silhouette well. So with that said, I'll get started. I'm going to start because I'm comfortable with, I'm going to draw with this magenta, dark maroon, whatever you want to call it. And because I want this is obviously shot as a dark figure against a light background in an extreme circumstance, I'm going to start with the dark. I'm going to have to move my reference around a little bit as I draw because I'm getting a really bad glare on my photography. So just doing that makes a bit of a difference. There's a couple of things you can think about when you start, and you should analyze before you start drawing. The two things I like to identify is kind of maybe a plumb line, where something lines up with my reference, that foot, and maybe the back of her eye. That is a nice plumb line that runs through this. The other thing I like to do as far as scale is how it sits on the page. And I don't always do the best job with that. I hate when I'm drawing and I realize my foot runs off the page. There's a lot of foreshortening in this photograph, the foot being so much larger. I may correct some of that in my drawing. I may not. One of the ways that you can control, which I never really do, but I know it's very helpful to people, is if you think about what's called enveloping, and you get the big shapes of the figure. And a lot of people have a much easier time, usually people have an easier time seeing that simplified shape that's maybe that. They see that easier on their page, and it helps you identify where your proportions pretty easily. I'm not going to do that because I don't mind, especially for the purpose of a demonstration. I'm not going to mind a little distortion, and I don't usually draw that accurately anyway. So I'm going to start with, and here's the dark I'm going to use. I just put a little bit over there, and then I'm going to use those two. I'm eventually going to kind of make a relationship that kind of works like that, but I'll explain that as I go along. So I start by drawing, I usually identify a shape with the shape of the head, just so I know, have a unit of measure. But I draw with the flat side. Not really drawing any detail. I'm a little small here, I want to grab bigger. This is a very correctable way of working, but I want to start with something where I get again, it's not going to be perfect, but we're going to be correcting all the way through this. And I want to, I'm kind of like building a stick figure from the inside and working my way out. And again, seeing the entire shape, seeing the silhouette is what my objective is in this. And I'm going to be close with my foot over here. I may cheat that a little bit, but we'll see. And it's, maybe looking for, as I said, that plumb line that I talked about. I also look for angles a lot. I'm looking for the angle of this leg. Maybe a little short there. You don't want to really make any commitments at this point, or too much of a commitment. You want to keep your drawing loose and simple. It's really nice how things, when you find something that lines up, it can help you quickly identify placement, where something goes. And again, this is as much of a lesson in seeing, and really relates to picture making more so than it probably does, certainly than it does anatomy. This is definitely observational drawing, and it is it's really kind of a 2D way of looking at drawing, instead of, character designers, some people that have studied academic painting and drawing may approach with constructive anatomy. I'm really approaching from a 2D side. And both have their strengths. What I like about most illustrators, most narrative painters, never try to say most on anything or say there's an absolute, but a lot of illustrators, well, more so on the illustrators than narrative painters, there's people have approached, artists have approached from a 2D point of view, where they're drawing, there's not as much necessity to draw with 3D constructive anatomy. And you can. I think that drawing from two-dimensionally really encourages and emphasizes the emotional quality, meaning the sensitivity aspect of your drawings. Probably more so than you would constructive anatomy. Things can be very. I know there's people that prove me wrong on that. There's great drawers, guys like Steve Houston, and that are marvelous academics that have great understanding of drawing from both directions, and create very sensitive drawings. But generally, observational drawing encourages the emotional quality. It encourages your ability to distort and to a more playfulness. It's like I would, consider, someone like a great drawer like Egon Schiele, Schiele, however you want to pronounce it, that has that approaches from a 2D side, not a 3D side, and the interest that he creates with in his drawings, and that's the importance of what he does. Okay, let's find this. Attempt to find. This could be. The camera's distorted it so much, which is okay. We can correct it. I just don't want it to look too out there and too odd. And we're and too large, because it is definitely foreshortened. I'm gonna cheat it a little bit. Well, that's basically the shape of what's going on here. I'm looking at it now, and I may want to add just a little bit of width. And put a few places. And I'm going to have to move my drawing, my reference here pretty quick to be able to see it a little bit better. Okay, so this is step one of the 5-step process. And generally, I do these with all in class in front of the model. You'll do these with in a 20-minute pose. It may take a little bit longer here because I'm talking so much, but that's all right. So I'm just kind of correcting a few things. I may have not done myself any favors about widening that there. Okay, and it's funny, it's like, you can come back and look at. I think I pulled her leg in a little bit, which is fine. But it all feels proportionally fairly correct. And so, what I will do next is the light that I'm going to use. I'm going to put this I'm going to go back and kind of correct. I want to get a little bit of light down to identify, and kind of helps harmonize in value and color. So this is step 2. It's just kind of going back, and we're going to do this a couple of times, correcting what I put down. And you see things when you start correcting. It's like, well, maybe I probably shorten this a little bit. So I'll lengthen it slightly. More importantly, I want some of this light color inside of my drawing. I want it to influence my color a little bit. That's probably enough. I'm going to go ahead and do one more thing, and that's add a little. This is a really dark photo, or dark figure, and it's very solid, so I'm going to beef that up a little bit. And then the next thing I do is step 3. I kind of pull it all together and try to flatten out. I'm trying to create a kind of a mid-tone that's different than the paper and the dark and light I used. Just want to cover that color. And again, I'm still thinking about the flat, overall flat shape. Okay. Now, thing I would do first after I did that, and what step 4 and step 5 are going in and strengthening your darks and then drawing the light on the form. In this case, since I'm doing a dark figure on a light background, I'm going to do the dark first and then bring light back on top of it. And then I may have to go back and correct what I did. But I want to start to really identify what's going on here. My father originally did this for students to teach them that rendering and finish is not the most important aspect of their drawing. It's going to be finding the weight transfer, identifying the silhouette and the shape, and that relates all the way, I mean, even really relates to posing. It's like what makes a good pose, and that's, you know, if you have a great pose and it's legible, it reads, then you don't have to work on the finish aspect of it very much, because it's explaining itself just with the pose. So it's like if I show a hand coming straight at me like that, that's not a really good description of a hand. But a hand like that is a much better pose. And just the hand being identified as a good silhouette against a dark, or a dark against the light, will do most of the work for you. You know, you're always thinking, you know, in this pose that this is the dark side. It's more, the light is kind of up to the right, and you can tell by the light on her forehead, and off to, and almost pushed behind her a little bit. And you try to think about that and don't forget it while you're working, because you want everything to kind of function the same way and to mechanically work the same way. These things can be adjusted and added to and changed along the way, but I want to try to establish. I'm going to probably be leaning over in front of the camera a little bit if I leave if I leave the figure there, then I need to, maybe I'll just drop it down. Keeps, I can see it better. You know, this is where I'm really thinking more about finish and light hitting form, but I want to get, I want to get my overall shape correct. You know, and really the intent, when you first start with this, you're not going to really hardly be dealing with line, and I ask you not to use line. I can't help it. It's part of what how I describe things. Again, we're still not doing something that's super finished. I can get into more of this towards the end. Got to start somewhere, right? And let's find gotta constantly, and I apologize for pausing with when I stop talking, because I kind of gotta concentrate at times, but you're just constantly correcting and trying to find the right shape. Looking at the contours, and thinking about the overall figure. All right. Gotta find this arm now. I can't see it very well. This is still me really trying to, more than anything, I'm still working on my silhouette. I'm trying to correct the shape of the head. Overall shape of the silhouette. Get too much rendering here, but I want to include it kind of to show you how I'm trying to build a value structure of that face, and I cannot not include it to get it correct. A little short. But starting to fall together. Okay. Now it's like this mapping I'm doing at the very beginning of this, of finding my silhouette. You know, it's like looking at you ever gone through the process of trying to identify all the states in the United States and starting with an outside shape and figuring where everything goes together. And I think that it's a little bit akin to that, but you really got to nail that shape. And you can adjust and move the states around to meet in the shape, maybe a little distorted, but similar. Some of this I wasn't quite expecting. You never know what you're going to get from drawing to drawing. I wasn't expecting that the light pastel that I put down would lighten up the dark so much when I rubbed it, but we'll be okay. Cast shadow here, indicate. Again, it's really no big deal correcting this stuff. This needs correcting. Really looking for the places that have the most information and are descriptive, and that would be like in your cast shadows, like here, that cast shadow from this arm onto the foot. Can't really see anymore. There's a lot going on in here. All right, well, let me just quickly blacken this hand. We probably won't get to really rendering it anyway. Again, I'm really looking for shape. Now all this stuff kind of fits together. Another beautifully long finger here. It's even longer than I've drawn it. Okay, for the sake of what we're doing right now, I'm going to go back in and push these things even darker in places. I really want them to have a strong deep value structure to it. Okay. Well, that's, I'm not going to say it's perfect by any means, but it's a really good start. And I know it seems like I've been drawing for a while to say it's a start, but finish happens pretty quick. This is my lighter value. I haven't used it except for where I put a little bit around the figure to start with. And I'll go in and I want to start drawing my light hitting form. Again, we can do this back and forth a number of times, and you can get very involved in this. I don't really want you to get that involved at the beginning. But you start kind of as if this is kind of a really tonalist way to approach. And you conquer so much information. You have to deal with so much information working this way because you're dealing with value, you're dealing with color, all of the things. You know, if you're thinking about, you know, going into a figure class and building with a pencil on a white piece of paper, you don't get to encounter as much. This is really becomes a pretty complete picture pretty quickly. We'll leave the head alone for right now. I have a hard time leaving the head alone. I never follow my rules. But I want to start establishing the light affecting the figure where there's hard edge, where the edge gets softer. Again, we can adjust our darks again after this. There's some things I would probably want to crispen up line or make a crisper line, cleaner line. Is that okay, Timmy?
Sounds good to me.
All right. As I'm getting some of these, couple areas I really want to push. And strengthen the dark. And I kind of want to do that before I go too far. With my light. just so I know how far I can get away with, how much I can get away with and how far I gotta go. Here there's another cast shadow, very subtle. I'm just looking for information at this point. And there's not a, I'm not going to draw into this big, heavy, dark shadow that's here, because I mean that's one of the strengths of the pose and the reference. But there's things I'm going to want to emphasize. Incorrect. Split that out a little bit. She really has that leg pulled up close. And if you want, cut it back a little bit. You're doing something like this with hair, you're thinking about composition, you're thinking about, I don't want things repeating each other, I don't want repeating shapes, and it doesn't have to be, you can make it a little bit more exciting than it actually is. And here there's shape of the ear, shape of the hairline, it's a little bit higher than I put in the lights. I'm doing the line with a really, I kind of like it. It's kind of a real clumsy tool, corner of the pastel, but it's enough. If you know where your information is, it's enough to explain. And you can bring as much detail into this as you want over a period of time. Just keep going back and forth. just keep one of my, trying to work on the whole drawing at once, and I end up bouncing around a lot because I want everything's relative, everything affects something else, and I put something in, I gotta correct it somewhere else. If I go darker, I really want to show this arm in front of this leg, so I want it to be a little bit this always happens to me. I stop talking and I've lost my, there it is. See if I can't get some finished information in here right now to see if it kind of comes together a little bit better. One of the things that I do a lot is I'll bring in a cool to the, there's like a reflection that's going on, so I'm bringing a little bit of reflected light into this so that it's explaining the turn of the form, or how the form turns a little bit better. And you can go too far really quick. It's got to feel like it's in the shadow. I feel bad I haven't solved this yet completely. It's not terrible, but it's not, it's not my favorite drawing, but it's not bad. I'm just trying to make some adjustments, strengthen some values a little bit more. Really kind of beat myself up at the beginning on this, but adding that light to the background really got me. But I think I can pull it back. Get the shape of this arm just right. Now it's like the more I draw on it, the lighter places, seems like they're not holding up enough. probably brought my value up a little bit too light in places, but still works. Oops. That's pretty good. It's not a great tape, but it's not bad. I don't want to get into rendering all that. That's pretty much what's going on. There's a lot more explanation that could go on. I'm not explaining the underside of this hand at all. Or the top, where these hands intersect, which is actually a ton of great information right in here. Cast shadow from this top hand. Now, if you could just show some of that information in your drawing, you don't have to complete it all. So you can see where that thumb lives and all that, but there's okay, I'm going to try one more thing, and that is this is such a dark figure on a light background. My value on the outside of my picture is pretty light. I'm going to take my try to just separate to show you what I'm talking about here. So you can see the shape of it a little bit better. pulls it out pretty well. But it is a little, it's a little, it's got a little light in places. And it's amazing how much dark I put on here. And it still has, it's got room that it could be darker. Let me make that leg turn around. Strong reflected light. Still having trouble with that light messing with me. But I'll leave it at that. There's some areas that I still would like to work on, but I just keep going back and forth. Maybe a little bit more. Kind of an ugly line. I think it was more sensitive. Still a little spotty. Struggle with it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Well, my intent was to go through, get the overall silhouette in dark first. To go back in step 2 and bring a little bit of light. In this case, it probably hung me a little bit. I kind of battled with it. I couldn't get my light to do what I really wanted it to do. And it made my dark come up so much. I was looking for such a dark, overall core shadow that it probably brought my lights up, my darks up a little bit too light. But all in all, I did get the shape of the figure very, I laid it down, got the overall shape. I worked back in, once I got the dark and then I smoothed it, I worked back in with my lights and darks back and forth to do a more complete, more complete figure. Ideally it's showing me where the cast shadows live, where shadows are cast and there's hard edge and soft edge and where light rolls over form. And that's ultimately what you're trying to get to with a figure drawing. Get everything right. The intent is that you could be able to do a piece, do a painting from your drawing. There's enough information here. I could work from this. It's not the best drawing I've ever done, but for explanation,